The first RPG turned the east wall into dust and shrapnel. Senior Chief Remy Fontenot threw himself behind a concrete pillar as automatic fire tore through the compound from 3 directions. His team was scattered, pinned, dying. Tango 2 is hit, someone screamed into the radio. Fontenot could not see who. Muzzle flashes lit the Afghan night like strobe lights, and the air smelled of smoke and copper. They had walked into a kill box. 40 insurgent fighters minimum. No air support for another 30 minutes. No extraction possible. This was where SEAL Team Bravo would end. Fontenot grabbed his radio. "Command, this is Night Viper 6. We are pinned at grid reference 479er. Requesting immediate air support." Immediate. Static answered. Then more gunfire. Then a voice. "Night Viper, I am on you. Stay low." Before we continue with this story, drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. Maybe you know someone who served in places like this, in the mountains of Afghanistan or other dangerous corners of the world. Fontenot froze. The voice was female, calm, controlled, and on a frequency that should have been secure. "Who is this?" he demanded. "Identify yourself." No response. But something else happened. The machine gun nest that had been shredding their position suddenly went silent. Fontenot risked a glance around the pillar. The gunner was down. Clean headshot. From where? He could not tell. Another crack echoed across the valley. Another fighter dropped. "Tanaka," Fontenot shouted to his communications specialist. "Who is on our frequency?" Petty Officer Yuki Tanaka scrambled to his position, blood running from a gash on his forehead. "I have no idea, Senior Chief. She is not in our network. But whoever she is, she just saved Morrison." Across the compound, Fontenot saw Morrison crawling toward cover. An insurgent had been lining up the kill shot. Now that insurgent lay crumpled against a wall with a hole in his chest. 3 more shots. 3 more kills. Each one impossible. Each one surgical. Fontenot had been a SEAL for 18 years. He had never seen shooting like this. "Night Viper," the female voice returned. "You have a window. North exit. 30 seconds. Move." Fontenot did not hesitate. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea how she had accessed their communications. He only knew that she was the reason his team was still breathing. "Bravo team, north exit," he bellowed. "Move, move, move." They ran. 6 operators carrying 1 wounded, sprinting through the shattered remains of a compound that should have been their grave. Behind them, the gunfire continued, but it was no longer aimed at them. Every insurgent who tried to pursue caught a bullet before they made it 3 steps. The team pushed through the north wall and into the rocky terrain beyond. Fontenot counted heads. All 7 accounted for. Morrison was bleeding badly from his shoulder, but he was alive. They were all alive. How? Tanaka breathed. How is that possible? Fontenot looked back at the compound. Flames now rose from several buildings. The insurgents had stopped pursuing. They were too busy dying. Somewhere out there in the darkness, a shooter was erasing an entire enemy force. Single shots. Perfect placement. No błastidam unishin. No hosetashin. It was the most beautiful and terrifying display of marksmanship Fontenot had ever witnessed. The female voice came through one final time. "Night Viper, you are clear to rally Point Echo. Suggest you move fast. More hostiles inbound from the south. Estimated arrival, 15 minutes. Wait," Fontenot said into his radio. "Who are you? How did you know we were here?" Silence. Respond. That is an order. Nothing. The frequency had gone dead. Tanaka checked his equipment. She is gone, Senior Chief. No signal. No trace. It is like she was never there. Fontenot stared into the darkness. His team gathered around him, battered and bloodied, but breathing. They should not be breathing. The ambush had been perfect. The kill box had been inescapable. And yet here they stood. Someone just killed 20-plus hostiles from a position we never identified, he said slowly. Someone who knew our call sign, our frequency, and our location. Someone who saved all of our lives and then vanished. Morrison grimaced as Tanaka applied pressure to his wound. "You think she is one of ours?" Fontenot considered the question. The skill level suggested special operations. The comms suggested extensive combat experience, but no female operators were supposed to be within 100 miles of their position. The Navy did not have women in SEAL teams. Not officially. I do not know what she is, Fontenot admitted, but we owe her our lives. He turned and signaled his team to move. They had 15 minutes before more hostiles arrived. Questions could wait. Survival could not. As they melted into the Afghan night, none of them noticed the figure on the ridge 800 meters to the east. She lay perfectly still, her eye pressed to the scope of a 13 Malawian Quachas rifle, watching them go. A spent brass casing rested near her elbow. 23 rounds fired. 23 kills. Chief Petty Officer Tamsin Adeyemi allowed herself a single breath. The team was safe. For now. She reached into her vest and touched the worn photograph she carried against her heart. A young man in dress whites. Her brother. The reason she was out here alone. The reason she would never stop fighting. Stay alive. Night Viper, she whispered to herself. Because I'm not done watching over you yet. Then she gathered her rifle and disappeared into the darkness, leaving nothing behind but silence and the bodies of those who had dared to threaten her people. Somewhere in the distance, Fontenot tried the radio one more time. Unknown station, this is Night Viper 6. If you can hear me, thank you. Only static answered. And out there in the Afghan night, a ghost smiled. 800 meters east of the burning compound, Tamsin Adeyemi broke down her rifle with practiced efficiency. Each movement was automatic. Stock folded. Scope protected. Barrel cooled. She had performed this ritual 1,000 times in a dozen countries. But tonight her hands trembled slightly. 23 shots. 23 lives ended. 23 families who would never see their sons again. She did not allow herself to dwell on it. The men she killed tonight had been trying to murder American sailors. They had forfeited their right to her sympathy the moment they pulled their triggers. Tamsin secured her weapon and began moving along the ridge. The terrain was brutal. Loose shale and sudden drops that could break an ankle or worse. She navigated it like she had been born here, placing each foot with precision, leaving no trace of her passage. The SEAL team was moving toward Rally Point Echo. Good. They were well-trained and their leader was smart. Fontenot. She had read his file before deploying. 18 years in the teams. 3 silver stars. A reputation for bringing his people home alive. Tonight, she had helped him maintain that reputation. Her earpiece crackled with distant chatter. Other units. Other missions. None of them knew she was here. Officially, Chief Petty Officer Tamsin Adeyemi was on a classified solo reconnaissance operation in a completely different province. Officially, she was gathering intelligence on supply routes. Officially, she answered only to Commander Dax Harwell at Bagram. Unofficially, Commander Harwell had sent her here to die. Tamsin paused at a rocky outcropping and scanned the valley below with her night vision. The burning compound was a beacon in the darkness. Soon the flames would attract attention. More fighters. Perhaps a quick reaction force from the nearby forward operating base. She needed to be gone before either arrived. She checked her GPS 17 kilometers to her extraction point. For hours of hard movement through hostile territory. No support. No backup. No one who would come looking if she disappeared. This was how Harwell wanted it. Alone and vulnerable and easy to erase. The photograph in her vest pocket pressed against her chest with every breath. She did not need to look at it. She had memorized every detail years ago. Kofi at his graduation from basic underwater demolition training. The biggest smile she had ever seen on his face. The pride in his eyes that matched her own. Her little brother had wanted to be a SEAL since he was 12 years old. He had trained for it, sacrificed for it, bled for it, and he had died for it 3 weeks before he would have earned his trident. Training accident. That was what the official report said. Equipment failure during a dive exercise. No one at fault. Just a tragedy. Tamsin had believed that report for 2 years. She had buried her brother with full honors and channeled her grief into becoming the deadliest sniper in naval special warfare. She had let the lie comfort her because the truth was too painful to pursue. Then she had found the maintenance logs. The dive equipment that killed Kofi had been flagged for replacement 6 months before his death. Commander Harwell had signed off on a waiver allowing its continued use. Budget constraints, the paperwork claimed. Acceptable risk levels within parameters. Kofi had drowned because Dax Harwell had decided new equipment was too expensive. And when Tamsin had started asking questions, Harwell had decided she was too expensive to keep alive. She moved through the darkness with renewed purpose. The solo deployment had been Harwell's idea. A special mission, he had called it. An opportunity to prove herself at the highest levels. She had been flattered, honored, stupid. The coordinates he gave her led directly into an ambush zone. The compound where Team Bravo had been attacked tonight was supposed to be empty according to his intelligence. Safe for surveillance. Perfect for a lone operator to gather information. Perfect for a lone operator to be killed without witnesses. Tamsin had smelled the trap 3 kilometers out. The movement patterns were wrong. The silence was too complete. She had diverted to the ridge and watched through her scope as 40 insurgent fighters established their kill box. Then Team Bravo had walked right into it. She could not let them die. Not when she had the power to save them. Not when their only crime was trusting the same command structure that had betrayed her. 17 kilometers to extraction. For hours of movement. And then what? She could not go back to Bagram. Harwell would know his ambush had failed. He would know someone had intervened. And when Team Bravo reported the mysterious female voice on their frequency, he would know exactly who had ruined his plans. Tamsin Adeyemi was now a loose end. And Commander Dax Harwell was very good at tying up loose ends. She reached a small cave in the hillside and ducked inside. A few hours of rest. That was all she could afford. Her body ached from 18 hours of constant movement and combat, but her mind would not quiet. Kofi would have laughed at this situation. He had always said she worried too much, planned too much, thought too much. Just shoot straight and move fast, he would tell her. Everything else works itself out. He had been wrong about that. Sometimes things did not work out. Sometimes the people you trusted put a knife in your back. Sometimes the system you served decided you were expendable. But Tamsin was not dead yet. And as long as she was breathing, she would make Commander Harwell pay for every lie, every betrayal, every life he had thrown away for his own convenience. Starting with her brother, she allowed her eyes to close. Just for a moment. Just long enough to see Kofi's face one more time. Stay alive, sister. His voice echoed in her memory. I am counting on you. I will, she promised the darkness. I will. 600 kilometers away at Bagram Airfield, Commander Dax Harwell stared at the satellite imagery on his screen. The compound was destroyed. The ambush had failed. And somewhere in the Afghan wilderness, a woman who knew his secrets was still breathing. His secure phone rang. He answered without greeting. The target survived, a voice reported. She engaged hostile forces and extracted a SEAL team from the kill zone. 23 confirmed enemy Kia. Harwell's jaw tightened. 23. From a single operator. He had known Adeyemi was skilled, but this was something else entirely. Where is she now? He asked. Unknown. She has gone dark. Harwell ended the call and leaned back in his chair. The office around him was immaculate. Flags and commendations and photographs with generals and senators. 22 years of service reduced to decorations on a wall. All of it meant nothing if Tamsin Adeyemi made it back to civilization. She had seen the maintenance logs. She knew about Kofi. And if she started talking, people would start listening. He picked up his phone and dialed a different number. This one was not on any official roster. I need a cleanup team, he said quietly. Helmand Province. One target. Make it look like enemy action. The voice on the other end asked no questions. Just a price and a timeline. Harwell agreed to both and hung up. By this time tomorrow, Tamsin Adeyemi would be just another casualty of war. Another name on a memorial wall. Another ghost. He did not know that out there in the darkness, the ghost was already hunting him. Team Bravo moved through the darkness like shadows. 7 operators spread across 50 meters of rocky terrain, each one covering their sector, each one listening for the sound of pursuit. Morrison was flagging. The shoulder wound had stopped bleeding, but he had lost enough blood to make the hard movement brutal. Fontenot called a halt in a narrow ravine. They had been moving for 2 hours. Rally Point Echo was still 6 kilometers away. At this pace, they would not make it before dawn. "Tanaka," he said quietly. "Any update on our mystery guardian?" Tanaka shook his head. "Nothing, Senior Chief. I have scanned every frequency. She is completely dark." Fontenot did not like it. Someone with that level of skill did not just disappear. She was either dead, captured, or choosing to stay hidden. None of those options sat well with him. Morrison slumped against a boulder. His face was pale, even in the green glow of night vision. "We need to talk about what happened back there," he said. "That was not possible. No single shooter could have done what she did." Fontenot had been thinking the same thing. 23 kills from an unknown position. Every shot placed perfectly. Every target eliminated before they could react. That was not just skill. That was something approaching supernatural. "She knew our call sign," Tanaka added. "She knew our frequency. She knew our grid coordinates. Whoever she is, she has access to classified operational data, which means she is either one of ours or she compromised our communications," Fontenot replied. "Neither option makes me comfortable." A younger operator named Reese spoke up from his position on the perimeter. "Maybe she is CIA, some kind of special activities asset we were not briefed on." Fontenot considered it. The agency did run operations in this province. They had shooters who could match what he had witnessed tonight. But agency assets did not typically save Navy SEALs out of the goodness of their hearts. They had their own agendas. "We keep moving," he decided. "Questions can wait until we are behind friendly lines." They pushed forward. The terrain grew more treacherous as they climbed toward a mountain pass that would lead them to Rally Point Echo. Loose rocks shifted underfoot. The thin air burned in their lungs. Morrison stumbled twice and had to be steadied by his teammates. Fontenot was 50 meters ahead when he saw it. Movement on the ridge above them. 3 figures silhouetted briefly against the stars before dropping into cover. "Contact," he hissed into his radio. "Ridgeline, 3 hostiles." The team melted into the rocks. Weapons came up. Eyes scanned for targets. But something felt wrong to Fontenot. The movement pattern was too controlled, too professional. Insurgent fighters did not move like that. Tanaka low-crawled to his position. "Senior Chief, those are not locals." Fontenot had already reached the same conclusion. The figures on the ridge were using American tactics. American formations. They were flanking positions that only someone with SEAL training would recognize. His blood went cold. The radio crackled. "Night Viper, this is your guardian. You have American operators on your 6. Repeat, American operators. They are not friendly." The female voice. "She was back." "Explain," Fontenot demanded. "No time. They are moving to intercept. Alternate route 200 meters west. A canyon. It will provide cover. Move now." "How do we know this is not a trap?" Reese challenged. "Because if I wanted you dead," the voice replied calmly, "you would already be dead. Move west. Now." Fontenot made the call in a heartbeat. He did not fully trust the voice, but he trusted his instincts. And his instincts told him that whoever was on that ridge meant to kill them. "Bravo, move west," he ordered. "Canyon route. Stay low and stay quiet." They moved. Behind them, the figures on the ridge adjusted their approach. Fontenot caught glimpses of them through his night vision. For men now, maybe 5. They were good, very good, but they were following a team that no longer existed at the expected coordinates. The canyon appeared out of the darkness like a wound in the earth. Narrow walls rose on either side, providing cover from above but limiting their escape options. It was a risk. Everything tonight was a risk. They pushed through. The canyon twisted and turned, forcing them to move single file. Fontenot kept his weapon trained on the darkness ahead while Reese covered their rear. Halfway through, they found the body. An American, full tactical gear, night vision pushed up on his helmet. A bullet hole in the center of his forehead. Fontenot knelt beside the corpse and checked for identification. The man carried no dog tags, no name tape, nothing that would identify his unit or affiliation. But his equipment was top of the line. the kind of gear that only Tier 1 operators received. Senior Chief, Tanaka said, his voice strained. Look at this. He held up the dead man's rifle. Standard SEAL issue. Serial number filed off, but the modifications were unmistakable. This weapon had come from their own armory. The female voice returned. He was point man for the team tracking you. There are 4 more. They will reach your position in approximately 8 minutes. You killed him, Fontenot said. He was going to kill you, she replied. I made a choice. Who are these people? Why are Americans trying to murder us? A pause. Then, keep moving through the canyon. I will explain when you are safe. But understand this. The men hunting you are not acting on official orders. They answer to someone who wants all of us dead. You, me, anyone who knows what happened tonight. What had happened tonight, Fontenot demanded. What are we in the middle of? The voice went silent. Fontenot stared at the dead American at his feet. 18 years in the teams. Dozens of deployments. Hundreds of firefights. He thought he understood how the world worked. Good guys and bad guys. Us and them. Clear lines and simple rules. Now those lines were dissolving. The enemy wore the same uniform he did. The only ally he could trust was a ghost he had never seen. We keep moving, he told his team. He could see the shock on their faces. The confusion. The betrayal. They had signed up to fight foreign enemies. Not their own brothers. Stay focused, Fontenot added. We figure out who is behind this later. Right now we survive. They left the body where it lay and pushed deeper into the canyon. Above them, the hunters adjusted their pursuit. Somewhere in the darkness, a woman with a rifle watched it all unfold. And at Bagram Airfield, Commander Dax Harwell received word that his cleanup team had lost contact with their point man. He poured himself a drink and waited. By morning, one way or another, this would all be over. He had no idea how wrong he was. The canyon opened into a narrow valley dotted with the ruins of an abandoned village. Mud brick walls crumbled into dust. Empty doorways stared like hollow eyes. Whatever families had lived here were long gone, driven out by decades of war. Fontenot signaled his team to hold at the village perimeter. Dawn was still 2 hours away, but the darkness felt thinner here. More exposed. He did not like it. Tanaka moved up beside him. Rally Point Echo is 4 kilometers northeast, he reported. If we push hard, we can make it before sunrise. And if those hunters are still on our tail, Fontenot replied, we lead them straight to our extraction. Before Tanaka could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows of a ruined building. Every weapon on the team came up instantly. 7 laser sights painted the stranger's chest. She did not flinch. The woman was tall and lean, dressed in unmarked tactical gear that matched the Afghan terrain. A 13 Malawian Quachas sniper rifle hung across her back. Her face was calm, almost serene, as if having 7 SEALs pointing weapons at her was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Night Viper 6, she said. We need to talk. Fontenot kept his weapon trained on her chest. Identify yourself. Chief Petty Officer Tamsin Adeyemi. Naval Special Warfare. Sniper qualified. Currently listed as conducting solo reconnaissance in Kandahar province. She paused. Obviously, that listing is inaccurate. Reese shifted his aim. There are no female SEALs. There are no official female SEALs, Tamsin corrected. I exist in a different category. Deniable assets for missions that require certain skill sets. She met Fontenot's eyes. You can verify my credentials through JSOC. But I suggest we have that conversation somewhere less exposed. Fontenot studied her. The way she held herself. The way she watched the terrain, even while talking. The easy confidence of someone who had spent years in combat. Everything about her said operator. You are the voice, he said. The one who saved us at the compound. 23 hostiles, Tamsin confirmed. And 1 American who got ahead of his team in the canyon. I did not enjoy that last one, but he would have killed your point man. Morrison stepped forward, his wounded arm hanging at his side. Why? Why save us? Why any of this? Because the same man who sent those hunters after you sent me here to die, Tamsin replied. Commander Dax Harwell. He runs operations out of Bagram, and he has been selling weapons to insurgent groups for the past 3 years. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Fontenot felt his team shift around him. This was dangerous territory. Accusing a senior officer of treason was not something you did lightly. That is a serious allegation, he said carefully. I have evidence, Tamsin replied. Shipping manifests, financial records, communications intercepts. Harwell has been using classified missions as cover for arms deals. Tonight was supposed to be my burial. He gave me coordinates for a safe reconnaissance position. That position was directly in the path of the ambush you walked into. You're saying he set us up too? Tanaka asked. I'm saying he did not care if you lived or died. Your mission put you in the same kill zone he designed for me. Collateral damage. She glanced over her shoulder at the dark terrain behind them. We have approximately 6 minutes before his cleanup team reaches this village. I suggest we continue this conversation while moving. Fontenot made his decision. If she wanted them dead, she had passed up a dozen opportunities. In her story, as insane as it sounded, explained the impossible situation they found themselves in. Lower weapons, he ordered. We move together. But I want answers, Adeyemi. All of them. You will get them, she promised. Assuming we survive the next hour. They moved into the village, using the ruined buildings for cover. Tamsin took point without asking, navigating the debris with the familiarity of someone who had studied satellite imagery until she could walk the terrain blindfolded. Fontenot matched her pace. How did you know about Harwell? My brother, she said quietly. Kofi Adeyemi. He died during SEAL training 2 years ago. Equipment failure. Except the equipment had been flagged for replacement months earlier. Harwell signed a waiver to keep it in service. She paused at a corner, checking sight lines before continuing. When I started asking questions, I became inconvenient. This mission was his solution. Before Fontenot could respond, the first shot cracked through the pre-dawn air. Tamsin shoved him sideways as a bullet sparked off the wall where his head had been. Contact, she called out, her voice still impossibly calm. For shooters. Northwest rooftops. The village erupted into chaos. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness from multiple positions. Harwell's team had caught up faster than anticipated, and they had the high ground. Bravo scattered into cover. Return fire echoed off the mud brick walls. Tamsin moved like liquid, flowing from position to position, her rifle barking with mechanical precision. 2 down, she reported. 2 more flanking east. Fontenot saw them. 2 figures moving through the ruins, trying to circle behind Morrison and Reese. He dropped one with a 3-round burst. Tanaka got the other. Then Tamsin stumbled. Fontenot saw the blood before he understood what had happened. A round had caught her in the shoulder, spinning her against a wall. Her rifle clattered to the ground. Any other person would have stayed down. Any other person would have screamed or cursed or called for help. Tamsin picked up her rifle with her left hand and kept shooting. 2 more targets, she said through gritted teeth. Tower. 11 o'clock. Fontenot followed her sight line and saw them. Shooters in the remnants of an old watchtower, perfect overwatch position. He and Tanaka opened up together, suppressing fire that drove the enemy back. Tamsin used the moment. 1 shot. Pause. 1 shot. Both targets dropped. Then she collapsed against the wall, her face pale as bone. Blood soaked through her jacket and pooled in the dust at her feet. Her breathing came in short, ragged gasps. Fontenot reached her in 3 strides. How bad? Through and through, she managed. Missed the artery. I will live. She looked up at him with eyes that refused to show fear. More will come. Harwell will not stop until we are all dead. Morrison was already pulling out his medical kit. We need to stabilize her, he said. She cannot move like this. I can move, Tamsin insisted. She tried to stand and nearly fell. Fontenot caught her. For 18 years, he had led men through the worst places on earth. He had never seen anyone fight through pain like this woman. She had taken a bullet and kept shooting. She had saved his team twice in one night. And she was still trying to get up. We hold here until she is stable, he ordered. Then we move together. All of us. Tamsin met his eyes. The distrust was gone from his face. In its place was something that looked almost like respect. You should leave me, she said. I'm slowing you down. Fontenot shook his head. Lady, You just killed 6 men with a hole in your shoulder. He checked his magazine and scanned the perimeter. We are not leaving anyone behind. That includes you. For the first time since he had met her, Tamsin smiled. It was small and tired and tinged with pain. But it was real. Then I suggest we move fast, she said, because I was not exaggerating about Harwell. He has resources you cannot imagine. And right now, every single one of them is hunting us. Morrison worked on Tamsin's shoulder with the efficiency of someone who had patched up wounds in a dozen war zones. The bullet had passed clean through the muscle, missing bone and major vessels. Lucky, if you could call getting shot lucky. Tamsin did not make a sound as he cleaned and packed the wound. Her jaw was tight, her eyes fixed on the horizon, but she gave no indication of the pain she had to be feeling. Fontenot posted Reese and 2 others on the perimeter while the rest of the team caught their breath. The village was quiet now. 6 bodies lay cooling in the dust. 6 Americans who had tried to murder fellow Americans. He crouched beside Tamsin. Tell me about your brother. She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he had heard it. Kofi was 4 years younger than me. He followed me into everything. Soccer, track, the Navy. When I qualified for advanced sniper training, he said he was going to be a SEAL. I told him he was crazy. She almost smiled at the memory. He told me crazy was a family trait. Fontenot waited. He had learned long ago that silence drew out more than questions. He made it through BUD/S. Tamsin continued. Hell Week, pool comp, all of it. 3 weeks from graduation, they were doing a dive exercise. Closed-circuit rebreather work. His equipment malfunctioned. By the time they got him to the surface, he had been without oxygen for 6 minutes. Morrison finished bandaging her shoulder and sat back. Her eyes were distant now. Lost in a memory she had relived 1,000 times. They kept him on life support for 3 days. I sat beside his bed and held his hand and begged him to wake up. She swallowed hard. He never did. I am sorry, Fontenot said. The words fell inadequate, but they were all he had. Tamsin shook her head. Sorry does not bring him back. Sorry does not explain why the equipment that killed him had been flagged as defective 6 months earlier. Sorry does not justify a commander who decided that replacing a $5,000 rebreather was too expensive. Harwell, Fontenot said. Harwell. She spat the name like poison. He signed the waiver personally. I found the paperwork buried in maintenance files that should have been destroyed. When I confronted him, he told me that operational readiness required difficult decisions. He said Kofi understood the risks when he enlisted. Her hands clenched into fists. My brother died because a bureaucrat decided his life was worth less than a budget line. And when I refused to let it go, that same bureaucrat decided I needed to disappear. Tanaka approached with his communications equipment. Senior Chief, I have something. He handed Fontenot a headset. The recording was scratchy, pulled from encrypted frequencies that should have been impossible to intercept. But Tanaka was the best communications specialist in the teams, and impossible was just another word for difficult. Harwell's voice filled his ears. Cleanup is taking longer than anticipated. The primary target has linked up with the SEAL element. I need additional assets. Another voice responded. Additional assets will cost additional funds. Whatever it takes. No survivors. I want this finished before dawn. Fontenot pulled off the headset. His face had gone hard as stone. That is confirmation, Tamsin said. Harwell just ordered our deaths on a channel he thought was secure. She looked at the team gathered around her. Now you understand what we were dealing with. This is not a rogue operator. This is a commander with access to classified networks, black budget funds, and enough connections to make bodies disappear. How deep does this go? Morrison asked. Deep, Tamsin replied. The weapons trafficking started 3 years ago. Harwell uses military transport to move arms to insurgent buyers. The money flows through shell companies in Dubai and Cyprus. She paused. Some of those weapons have been used against American forces. I do not know exact numbers, but the death toll is significant. Reese called from the perimeter. Movement. Half a kilometer south. Multiple signatures. Fontenot was on his feet instantly. How many? Reese adjusted his optics. At least 10. Professional movement. They're not trying to hide. Because they know we are trapped, Tamsin said. She pushed herself up, grimacing as the movement pulled at her wounded shoulder. This village is a dead end. Only 2 routes out. They will have both covered. Then we make a 3rd route, Fontenot said. Tamsin studied his face. What are you thinking? There is a dry riverbed 200 meters east. It runs through a canyon system that eventually connects to the main valley. Haut terrain. Dangerous in daylight. Nearly impossible in the dark. He smiled grimly. But impossible is what we do. Tamsin nodded slowly. It could work. If we move fast and stay quiet. Can you move? Morrison asked her. She picked up her rifle and checked the action with her good hand. I can shoot. Moving is just walking with purpose. They gathered their gear in silence. 10 enemy fighters closing from the south. A commander with unlimited resources who wanted them dead. A wounded sniper who refused to quit. And a team of SEALs who had just learned that their own military had been compromised. Fontenot took point. Tamsin fell in behind him, her rifle ready to spite the blood still seeping through her bandage. The others spread out in tactical formation. As they slipped into the darkness toward the riverbed, Tanaka moved up beside Tamsin. For what it is worth, he said quietly, I believe you. About Harwell. About all of it. Tamsin glanced at him. That is worth more than you know. They reached the riverbed without contact. The canyon walls rose around them, black and imposing against the lightning sky. Somewhere behind them, Harwell's hunters were discovering an empty village and 6 dead comrades. Fontenot pushed the pace. Dawn was coming. With daylight came visibility, and visibility meant death for a team being hunted from the air and ground simultaneously. Tamsin kept up despite her wound. Every step had to be agony, but she matched the team stride for stride. Fontenot found himself watching her with something approaching awe. He had known warriors his entire adult life. Men who would die before they quit. Men who defined themselves by their refusal to surrender. Tamsin Adeyemi belonged in that company, maybe at the front of it. The canyon narrowed ahead, forcing them into single file. Fontenot slowed, checking corners, watching for ambush positions. They were vulnerable here. One machine gun at the right angle could end them all. Then Tanaka's radio crackled with another intercepted transmission. All units, Harwell's voice commanded. Target package is moving east through canyon system. I'm authorizing drone support. Hellfire missiles approved. No survivors. Fontenot stopped cold. Drone support. Elfio missile. Harwell was not just sending men anymore. He was sending aircraft. Against American personnel. He looked back at his team. At Tamsin, pale and bleeding but still standing. At Morrison and Tanaka and Reese and the others who had trusted him to bring them home. They had maybe 20 minutes before a Predator drone turned this canyon into a graveyard. Move, he ordered. Everyone move now. They ran. There was no other word for it. 7 operators and 1 wounded sniper sprinting through a canyon that could become their tomb at any moment. Above them, somewhere in the brightening sky, a Predator drone was being vectored to their position. Fontenot pushed the pace until his lungs burned. Behind him, he could hear Morrison's labored breathing, the man's wounded shoulder making every stride a battle. Tamsin kept up somehow, running on willpower and rage. The canyon forked ahead. Left led deeper into the mountains. Right opened toward a valley that might offer cover from aerial observation. Right, Tamsin gasped. There are caves. I saw them on satellite imagery. Fontenot did not question her. He turned right, and the team followed. The caves appeared 300 meters later, dark mouths carved into the canyon wall by centuries of wind and water. They were not deep, but they were deep enough. The team piled inside, just as the distant whine of a drone engine became audible. Everyone stay still, Fontenot ordered. Thermal imaging will pick up movement. They pressed against the cold stone and waited. The drone passed overhead, its engine a high-pitched hum that seemed to fill the entire canyon. Tamsin had her eyes closed, her lips moving silently. Prayer or calculation, Fontenot could not tell. The sound faded. The drone was moving east, following the canyon system away from their position. It will come back, Tamsin said. Standard search pattern. We have maybe 15 minutes before it sweeps this area again. Then we use those 15 minutes, Fontenot replied. He turned to Tanaka. Tell me you got more from those intercepts. Tanaka nodded and pulled out a small tablet. I have been decrypting Harwell's communications since we left the village. He hesitated. Senior Chief, you need to see this. The tablet screen glowed in the darkness of the cave. Tanaka had organized the intercepted data into a timeline. Shipping manifests, bank transfers, coordinates of weapons drops. 3 years of treason laid out in damning detail. But that was not what made Fontenot's blood run cold. Tanaka scrolled to a separate file. After-action reports, incident analyses, casualty notifications. 47 documents spanning 18 months. These are attacks on American forces, Tanaka explained quietly. IED strikes, ambushes, sniper attacks. Every single one of them used weapons that appear in Harwell's shipping manifests. Fontenot stared at the screen. The names blurred together, but the numbers were clear. 43 American service members killed, dozens more wounded, families destroyed, lives ended, all because one man wanted to get rich. He sold weapons that killed our own people, Morrison said. His voice was hollow with disbelief. He armed the enemy, and they used those arms against us. Tamsin had not moved. She sat against the cave wall, with her eyes fixed on something none of them could see. I suspected, she said quietly. When I found the manifests, I knew the weapons were going to insurgent groups, but I did not have proof that they had been used against Americans. She looked at the tablet screen. Now I do. Reese slammed his fist against the stone. We have to kill him. We have to put a bullet in his skull and end this. No, Fontenot said. The word came out harder than he intended. Killing him is too easy. He looked around at his team. This man has committed treason. He has murdered American soldiers for profit. He dies in front of a firing squad, not in some quiet assassination that lets him escape justice. Tamsin nodded slowly. Fontenot is right. Harwell has connections. If we kill him without evidence, his allies will bury the truth. They will make us the criminals. She pushed herself to her feet, wincing as the movement pulled at her shoulder. We need proof that will survive a court-martial. Documents, testimony, physical evidence that cannot be disputed. And how exactly do we get that? Morrison asked. We are hunted, cut off from support, being targeted by our own military assets. We go to the source, Tamsin replied. Harwell keeps records, physical copies of everything. He is too paranoid to trust digital storage completely. Those records are at his operations center in Bagram. You want us to infiltrate Bagram Airfield, Tanaka said slowly. One of the most heavily secured military installations in Afghanistan, while being actively hunted by the man who controls that installation. Tamsin met his eyes. I want us to expose the man who murdered 43 Americans and try to murder all of us. I want us to make sure he spends the rest of his life in a cell at Leavenworth. And I want to look him in the eye when they read the charges. The cave fell silent. Outside, the sun was rising over the mountains, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and red. Somewhere above them, a drone was circling back for another pass. Fontenot looked at his team. They were exhausted, wounded, hunted. Everything about this situation said they should run. Find a way back to friendly lines. Report what they knew and let someone else handle the rest. But those 43 names would not let him walk away. He thought about the families who had received folded flags, the children who would grow up without parents, the parents who had buried sons and daughters. All of them deserved to know the truth. He turned to Tamsin. You said Harwell is paranoid. That means security, cameras, guards, protocols we do not know about. She nodded. It also means he trusts very few people. His inner circle is small. Most of the base has no idea what he is doing. Then we use that, Fontenot decided. We get inside, we get the evidence, and we transmit it to everyone. Command, Pentagon, media, everyone who can make sure this story does not get buried. Morrison straightened despite his wound. I am in. Tanaka nodded. Same. One by one, the rest of the team voiced their commitment. Reese, Okonkwo, Park, Hawkins. 7 men who had started the night as strangers to Tamsin Adeyemi. 7 men who now stood ready to follow her into the heart of enemy territory. Tamsin looked at each of them in turn. Her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "Thank you," she said simply. Fontenot checked his weapon. "Do not thank us yet. We still have to survive long enough to pull this off." He glanced toward the cave entrance. "Drone should be passing overhead again soon. After it clears, we move." Tamsin picked up her rifle. "For Kofi," she said quietly. "For all of them," Fontenot replied. They waited in the darkness as the drone's engine whined overhead once more. 8 people against a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of military command. The odds were impossible, but impossible was what they did. They moved through the mountains for 16 hours. No roads, no trails, just brutal terrain that punished every step and hid them from the eyes in the sky. By nightfall, they had covered 30 kilometers and crossed into a valley that would lead them toward Bagram. Fontenot called a halt in a rocky depression that offered concealment from aerial surveillance. The team collapsed into defensive positions, exhaustion etched into every face. Morrison's shoulder had started bleeding again. Tamsin's wound had soaked through her bandage twice. But they were alive, and they were closer to Harwell than they had been that morning. Tanaka distributed the last of their rations. Cold MREs eaten in silence. Nobody complained. After what they had been through, food was fuel and nothing more. Tamsin sat apart from the others, her rifle across her lap, her eyes scanning the darkness. Fontenot settled beside her and offered a packet of crackers. "You need to eat," he said. She took the packet without argument. For a few minutes, they sat in comfortable silence, 2 warriors sharing a moment of peace before the storm. "Tell me something good about him," Fontenot said finally. "About Kofi." Tamsin was quiet for so long that he thought she would not answer. Then a small smile crossed her face. "He was terrible at cards," she said. "Worst poker face I have ever seen. Every time he had a good hand, he would get this little twitch at the corner of his mouth. I took $300 off him the night before he shipped out for BUD/S. Fontenot chuckled. "Did he ever figure out his tell?" "Never." She shook her head. "He accused me of cheating for years. Said there was no way I could read him that well. I told him that was exactly why he would never beat me. Sounds like you were close. He was my best friend." Tamsin's voice softened. "Our parents died when we were young. Quel accident. We raised each other after that. He used to say we were not just siblings. We were a 2-person army against the world." Fontenot thought about his own family. His wife back in Louisiana. His 2 daughters who sent him drawings and letters that he carried in his vest pocket. "I have 2 girls," he said, 8 and 11. "They think I am a superhero." He paused. "Some days that belief is the only thing that keeps me going." "That is a good reason to fight," Tamsin replied. "Better than revenge. You think that is all this is for me?" "Revenge." She looked at him directly. "I think it started that way. But somewhere between the compound and this valley, it became something else." She gestured toward the team scattered around them. "These men trusted me when they had no reason to. They believed me when the evidence sounded insane." She paused. "I owe them more than vengeance. I owe them justice." Morrison limped over and lowered himself onto a rock nearby. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I need to tell you something." Fontenot raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Morrison pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photograph. A young Marine in dress blues, grinning at the camera with the confidence of youth. "My cousin," Morrison explained. "Lance Corporal Derek Shaw. He was killed 18 months ago. IED strike in Helmand province." He looked at Tamsin. "His convoy was hit with an Iranian-manufactured explosive. Same type that shows up in Harwell's manifests." The words hung in the air. Morrison's jaw was tight, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I thought it was just bad luck," he continued. "Wrong place, wrong time. That is what they told us. That is what I told his mother at the funeral." He swallowed hard. "Now I find out some American officer might have sold the bomb that killed him." Tamsin reached out and gripped his uninjured shoulder. "We are going to make this right," she said. "For Derek. For all of them." One by one, the other team members drifted closer. Tanaka spoke about a friend lost to a sniper using American ammunition. Reese mentioned a mentor killed by a rocket that should never have reached enemy hands. Park had lost his brother-in-law to an ambush that used suspiciously advanced tactics. The connections spread through the team like cracks in ice. Harwell's betrayal had touched each of them personally. They had been fighting a war against an enemy armed by their own side. Fontenot listened to each story. The weight of command had never felt heavier. These men deserved answers. They deserved closure. And they deserved to watch Commander Dax Harwell answer for his crimes. "We move in 4 hours," he said when the last story had been told. "Rest while you can. Tomorrow we hit Bagram." Tamsin caught his arm as the team dispersed. "Fontenot, thank you." "For what?" "For listening." She looked at the men around them. "For helping them share. Grief is lighter when it is carried together." He nodded. "Get some sleep, Adeyemi. You're going to need it." She settled against a rock and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into the shallow rhythm of combat sleep. Even unconscious, her hand rested on her rifle. Fontenot took first watch. The stars overhead were brilliant, unmarred by light pollution. Somewhere out there, Harwell was marshaling his resources, planning his next move, confident that his hunters would finish the job. He had no idea that the hunted had become the hunters. For hours passed in silence. Fontenot woke the team with quiet efficiency. They gathered their gear and prepared to move. No speeches, no motivation. They all knew what was at stake. Tamsin checked her rifle one final time. "Kofi would have loved this," she murmured. "Impossible. Evil villain. Band of brothers fighting for justice." Fontenot smiled despite himself. "Sounds like a movie. Maybe someday it will be." She chambered around. "But first we have to survive it." They moved out under cover of darkness, 8 shadows flowing through the Afghan night toward a reckoning that would change everything. Bagram Airfield lay 40 kilometers ahead. Commander Dax Harwell had no idea they were coming, but he would learn soon enough. Bagram Airfield sprawled across the Afghan landscape like a small city. Concrete barriers, guard towers, rows of aircraft gleaming under floodlights. Thousands of personnel moving through a maze of buildings and hangars that never truly slept. Fontenot studied the perimeter through his optics from a ridge 2 kilometers out. Getting in would be difficult. Getting out would be nearly impossible. Tamsin lay beside him, her rifle scope tracing the patrol patterns. "Harwell's operations center is in the northeast quadrant," she said quietly. "Building 712. 2 stories. Reinforced security. He keeps his personal files in a safe on the 2nd floor." "How do you know that?" Fontenot asked. "Because I spent 6 months planning to expose him before he sent me to die." She lowered her scope. "I know his schedule, his habits, his weaknesses. The problem was always getting close enough to use that knowledge." "Now we get close," Fontenot said. They had spent the previous day observing the base, mapping guard rotations, identifying blind spots in the security coverage. Tanaka had tapped into base communications, feeding them real-time information about patrol movements and shift changes. The window was narrow, 23 minutes between guard rotations on the northeast perimeter. Enough time to breach the fence, cross 400 meters of open ground, and reach Building 712. Not enough time for mistakes. Fontenot gathered the team in a shallow depression behind the ridge. "Final brief," he said. "Tanaka and Park handle communications and overwatch from position Alpha. Morrison, you're in no shape for close work. Stay with them and coordinate extraction." Morrison started to protest, but a look from Fontenot silenced him. "Reese, Hawkins, Okonkwo, you are with me and Adeyemi. We breach the building, secure the evidence, and exfiltrate before anyone knows we were there." He paused. "Rules of engagement are defensive only. We are not here to kill Americans. We are here to expose a traitor." Tamsin checked her sidearm. "And if Harwell is in the building, then we take him alive," Fontenot replied. "He faces justice, not a bullet." She nodded slowly. The hunger for revenge still burned in her eyes, but discipline held it in check. They moved out at 0200 hours. The night was moonless, perfect for infiltration. Tamsin led them through terrain she had memorized from satellite imagery, avoiding sensors and sight lines with practiced precision. The perimeter fence was standard military issue. Razor wire on top, motion sensors at the base. Hawkins defeated the sensors with a bypass kit, while Okonkwo cut a gap in the chain link. They slipped through one at a time, silent as ghosts. 400 meters of open ground stretched before them. Fontenot's heart pounded as they crossed it. Every shadow could hide a guard. Every sound could trigger an alarm. But they reached Building 712 without incident. Tamsin picked the lock on a service entrance in under 30 seconds. The door swung open onto a dark corridor. Emergency lighting cast everything in dim red. Second floor, she whispered. Third door on the left. They moved through the building in tactical formation. Reese covered their rear while the others advanced. The corridors were empty at this hour. Most of Harwell's staff worked normal schedules, unaware of the crimes being committed in their commander's name. The office door was reinforced steel with an electronic lock. Tamsin produced a device from her vest and attached it to the keypad. 30 seconds later, the lock clicked open. Harwell's office was exactly as she had described. A desk, filing cabinets, a large safe built into the wall behind a portrait of the commander shaking hands with a 4-star general. Tamsin went straight for the safe. The combination had taken her months to acquire, pieced together from observation and careful social engineering. She entered the numbers with steady hands. The safe opened. Inside were stacks of files, shipping manifests, bank statements, photographs of Harwell meeting with known insurgent leaders. Everything they needed to destroy him. Fontenot started photographing documents while Tamsin loaded physical files into her pack. They worked in silence, every second precious. Then Tanaka's voice crackled in their earpieces. Night Viper, you have company. Patrol approaching Building 712. For men, they are not scheduled. Fontenot froze. How long? 2 minutes. Maybe less. They're moving with purpose. Someone tipped them off. Tamsin grabbed the last of the files. We need to go. Now. They exited the office and moved toward the service entrance. Reese took point, his weapon ready. They were 50 meters from the exit when the lights came on. Four men in tactical gear blocked the corridor ahead. Four more appeared behind them, all weapons raised, all faces hard. A familiar voice echoed through the hallway. Chief Petty Officer Adeyemi. I was wondering when you would come home. Commander Dax Harwell stepped through the rear group of soldiers. He was dressed in combat fatigues, a sidearm on his hip, a smile on his face that did not reach his eyes. And Senior Chief Fontenot. He shook his head. I expected better from you. Getting involved in this woman's delusions. Fontenot kept his weapon trained on Harwell. These are not delusions. We have the evidence. It is over. Harwell laughed. Evidence can be destroyed. Witnesses can be silenced. He gestured at the armed men surrounding them. Did you really think I would not have security on my own office? A burst of static erupted in Fontenot's earpiece. Then Tanaka's voice, strained and urgent. They have Morrison and Park. I am attempting to evade, but they are everywhere. I am sorry, Senior Chief. I am a transmission cut off. Harwell's smile widened. Your Overwatch team is being collected as we speak. By morning, this will all be a tragic friendly fire incident. 8 SEALs killed by enemy action during a classified operation. Very sad. Very convenient. Tamsin's hand tightened on her weapon. You murder my brother. I made a cost-benefit analysis. Harwell replied coldly. Your brother was acceptable collateral. Just like you. Just like all of them. He stepped closer. The world is not run by heroes, Adeyemi. It is run by people who understand that some lives are worth more than others. Fontenot saw Tamsin's finger move toward her trigger. He also saw the 8 rifles pointed at their heads. If she fired, they all died. Stand down, he said quietly. That is an order. Tamsin's jaw clenched. For a long moment, she did not move. Then, slowly, she lowered her weapon. Harwell nodded to his men. Take them. Separate cells. No communication. The soldiers moved forward. Fontenot felt hands grab his arms, wrench his weapon away. Beside him, Tamsin was being restrained with brutal efficiency. As they were dragged toward the door, Fontenot caught her eye. This is not over, he mouthed. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. Harwell thought he had won. He thought his secrets were safe. He had no idea that Tanaka's final transmission had not been a surrender. It had been a signal. The holding cell was concrete and steel, designed to break the spirit of anyone confined within its walls. Tamsin sat in the corner, her wounded shoulder throbbing, her mind racing through possibilities. Harwell had separated them. Fontenot was somewhere else in the building. The others scattered across the base in isolated detention. Standard procedure for neutralizing a team. Cut off communication. Destroy unit cohesion. Break them one by one. But Harwell had made a mistake. He assumed Tanaka's final transmission had been a cry for help. It had been something far more dangerous. 3 hours earlier, while Fontenot's team infiltrated the building, Tanaka had been running a parallel operation. Every document Tamsin photographed had been transmitted in real time to a secure server. Every file, every manifest, every damning photograph was now sitting in the inbox of the Inspector General's office, the Pentagon's Criminal Investigation Division, and 4 major news networks. Harwell's secrets were no longer secret. Tamsin closed her eyes and waited. The evidence was out. Now, she just needed to survive long enough for it to matter. The door to her cell opened. 2 of Harwell's men entered, their faces hard. "The commander wants to see you," one of them said. She stood slowly, letting them think she was defeated. They grabbed her arms and marched her through a maze of corridors. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The base was quiet, most personnel asleep, unaware of the drama unfolding in their midst. They brought her to a briefing room. Harwell sat at the head of a long table, his uniform immaculate, his expression calm. But Tamsin noticed the tension in his jaw, the slight tremor in his hands. Something had gone wrong for him. "Leave us," Harwell told his men. They hesitated. "Sir, she is dangerous." "I said leave us." The guards withdrew. The door closed. Tamsin and Harwell faced each other across the empty room. "You transmitted the files," he said. It was not a question. Tamsin said nothing. Harwell stood and walked to the window. Outside, the first light of dawn was creeping over the mountains. "My phone has not stopped buzzing for the past hour. Inquiries from Washington. Demands for explanations." He turned to face her. "You have destroyed everything I built." "You destroyed yourself," Tamsin replied. "I just made sure the world knew about it." His composure cracked. "You think this is justice? You think exposing me will bring back your brother?" He stepped closer, his voice rising. Kofi was weak. He washed out of training because he could not handle the pressure. The equipment failure was a convenient excuse. Tamsin felt rage surge through her veins. But she held herself still. "Do not react. Do not give him the satisfaction. My brother was stronger than you will ever be," she said quietly. "He believed in something. Honor, duty, sacrifice. You believe in nothing but yourself." The door burst open. Master Chief Petty Officer Silas Drummond filled the doorway, his massive frame blocking the light from the corridor. Behind him stood a squad of military police, weapons drawn. "Commander Harwell," Drummond said, "you are under arrest for treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Step away from the prisoner." Harwell's face went pale. "Silas, we had an arrangement." Drummond's expression was stone. "I read the files, Dax. 43 Americans dead." He shook his head slowly. "There is no arrangement that covers that." The military police moved into the room. Harwell backed against the wall, his eyes darting between Drummond and Tamsin. "You cannot do this," he sputtered. "I have connections. I have protection at the highest levels." "Your connections are currently being arrested across 3 continents," Drummond replied. "The Secretary of Defense was personally briefed an hour ago." He paused. "It is over." Harwell's hand moved toward his sidearm. 2 MPs tackled him before he could draw. They wrestled him to the ground and secured his wrists with zip ties. Tamsin watched without emotion. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The satisfaction she expected did not come. Only emptiness and exhaustion. "Where are my people?" she asked Drummond. "Being released now." He studied her with something like respect. "You did good work, Chief. Risky as hell, but good. I had help." Drummond nodded. Your SEAL team is waiting outside. They refused medical attention until they saw you. He almost smiled. Stubborn bunch. They're not my team. They would disagree. She followed him out of the briefing room. The corridor was chaos now. MPs everywhere. Officers shouting into phones. The carefully constructed world of Commander Dax Harwell was collapsing in real time. Fontenot met her at the entrance to the detention wing. His face was bruised, his uniform torn, but his eyes were bright with relief. "Tanaka," she asked. "Alive." He grinned, already bragging about how he saved us all with his computer skills. The rest of the team gathered around her. Morrison with his arm in a proper sling now. Reese and Hawkins looking battered but unbowed. Park and Okonkwo exchanging exhausted smiles. Tanaka typing furiously on a borrowed tablet. They had done the impossible. They had taken down a commander who thought himself untouchable. They had exposed a conspiracy that reached across continents. But as Tamsin looked at the chaos around her, she realized something was wrong. "Where's Harwell?" she asked suddenly. Drummond's face changed. He was being transported to holding. An explosion echoed from somewhere across the base. Alarms began to wail. Personnel scrambled for cover. Drummond grabbed his radio. "Report. What is happening?" The response was garbled, panicked. "Prisoner transport was hit. Vehicle destroyed. The commander is gone." Tamsin felt her blood turn to ice. Harwell had escaped. "He has contingencies," she said. "Safe houses. Exit routes. He planned for this." Fontenot grabbed her arm. "Then we find him. We finish this." She looked at her team. Battered. Exhausted. Wounded. They should be in hospital beds, not hunting a desperate traitor through a war zone. But every single one of them nodded. "Let us move," Tamsin said. The hunt was not over yet. Harwell had a 15-minute head start. In 15 minutes, a man with his resources could disappear forever. Tamsin ran through the chaos of Bagram Airfield with Fontenot at her side. Behind them, the rest of the team spread out, covering exits and coordinating with Drummond's MPs. The base was in lockdown, but lockdowns meant nothing to a man who had been smuggling weapons through military checkpoints for 3 years. Where would he go? Fontenot asked. She ran through the possibilities. His network was compromised. His accounts would be frozen within hours. His contacts were being rounded up across multiple countries. He needed transportation, cash, and a destination beyond American jurisdiction. "The helicopter pad," she said suddenly. "East side of the base. There is a civilian contractor bird that runs supply missions to the border region. Off the books. He has used it before." They changed direction, sprinting between hangars and maintenance buildings. The eastern perimeter was less secure than the main gates. Perfect for a quiet exit. The helicopter came into view as they rounded a final corner. A modified Black Hawk with civilian markings, rotors already spinning. A pilot sat at the controls, clearly nervous. And there, climbing toward the open door, was Commander Dax Harwell. Tamsin dropped to one knee and raised her rifle. The scope found Harwell's back. Sittermass. An easy shot. A shot that would end everything. Her finger rested on the trigger. Fontenot crouched beside her. "You have him." "I have him." Harwell was almost to the helicopter now. Another 10 seconds, and he would be inside. Another 30, and he would be airborne. Another hour, and he would be beyond their reach forever. Tamsin's breathing steadied. Her heartbeat slowed. The world narrowed to the circle of her scope and the man inside it. She thought about Kofi, his smile, his laugh, the way he used to call her at midnight just to talk about nothing. She thought about the 43 names on Tanaka's list, the families who would never see their loved ones again, the children who would grow up without parents. Havel deserved to die, every fiber of her being screamed for her to pull the trigger. But death was too easy. "Harwell," she shouted. "Stop." He froze at the helicopter door, turned slowly, saw her kneeling 200 meters away with a rifle pointed at his chest. For a long moment, neither of them moved. "You will not shoot," Harwell called out. His voice carried across the tarmac, barely audible over the rotors. "You want me alive. You want me to suffer." Tamsin stood and began walking toward him. Her rifle stayed level, her aim unwavering. Fontenot flanked her on the right. The rest of the team was closing from other angles, cutting off escape routes. "I want you to face justice," she replied. "I want you to stand in a courtroom while they read the names of every person you killed. I want you to look their families in the eye. I want you to spend the rest of your life in a cell, knowing that everything you built was destroyed by the woman you tried to murder." Harwell's hand moved toward his sidearm. "Do not," Tamsin warned. "I will put a bullet through your shoulder before you clear the holster." "You know I can." He hesitated. His eyes darted between her and the helicopter. The pilot was gesturing frantically, ready to lift off with or without his passenger. "It does not have to end like this," Harwell said. His voice had changed. Softer now, almost pleading. "I have money, resources. I can disappear. You will never see me again. Your brother gets justice in the records. I get gone. Everyone wins. Everyone except the 43 dead Americans," Tamsin replied. "Everyone except their families. Everyone except the next soldiers who would have died from weapons you sold." She was 20 meters away now, close enough to see the sweat on his face, the fear in his eyes, the desperation of a man watching his empire crumble. "Get on your knees," she ordered. "Hands behind your head." Harwell did not move. "You know what happens if I go to trial. Names will come out. Important names. People will be embarrassed. They will make deals. Reduce charges. I will be out in 10 years. Then I will be waiting," Tamsin said. "However long it takes. Whatever it costs. I will be there when they open your cell door. And I will make sure the world remembers what you did." Something broke behind Harwell's eyes. The calculation, the manipulation, the cold confidence that had defined him. It all shattered in a single moment. He dropped to his knees. Fontenot moved in with zip ties while Tamsin covered. The rest of the team formed a perimeter, weapons trained on the helicopter until the pilots shut down the engines and surrendered. It was over. Tamsin lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking now. The adrenaline that had sustained her for 3 days was finally fading, leaving behind an exhaustion that went deeper than muscle and bone. Fontenot secured Harwell's wrists and hauled him to his feet. The commander's face was blank, empty, a man who had lost everything, staring into a future of prison cells and public disgrace. "You could have killed me," Harwell said quietly. "Why did you not?" Tamsin stepped close to him, close enough to see the lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair, the hollow shell of a man who had sold his soul for money and power. "Because my brother believed in honor," she said. "He believed that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the easy thing." She paused. "I'm not going to dishonor his memory by becoming like you." Drummond's MPs arrived moments later. They took custody of Harwell with grim efficiency, loading him into an armored vehicle that would transport him to a secure facility pending court-martial. Tamsin watched until the vehicle disappeared from sight. Fontenot stood beside her. "How do you feel?" She considered the question. The rage that had driven her for 2 years was still there, but quieter now, transformed into something else, something that felt almost like peace. "I feel like it is finally over," she said. Fontenot shook his head. "Not quite." He gestured toward the team gathered behind them. "You still have a debrief to survive. Pentagon is sending a delegation. They have questions." Tamsin almost laughed. After everything they had been through, a debrief felt absurdly mundane. "Then let us give them answers," she said. She turned and walked toward her team, toward the men who had believed her when no one else would, toward the future she had fought so hard to reach. Behind her, the sun rose over Bagram Airfield, burning away the darkness of the night before. The Pentagon delegation arrived at Bagram within 48 hours. 3 generals, a team of JAG lawyers, and enough aides to staff a small embassy. They commandeered an entire building for their investigation, and the interviews began immediately. Tamsin spent 11 hours in a sterile conference room answering questions. Every mission, every discovery, every shot fired. The lawyers dissected her story with surgical precision, looking for inconsistencies, testing her account against the mountain of evidence Tanaka had transmitted. She gave them everything: names, dates, locations, The maintenance logs that prove Kofi's equipment have been flagged for replacement. The manifest that traced Harwell's weapons to insurgent hands. The financial records that mapped 3 years of blood money flowing through shell companies. By the end, the lead JAG officer looked physically ill. "Chief Adeyemi," he said, "we owe you an apology. The system failed you. It failed your brother. It failed every service member who died because of Harwell's treason." He paused. "That failure will be addressed." Tamsin felt nothing. Apologies were words. She wanted action. "What happens now?" she asked. "Commander Harwell will face a general court-martial on charges of treason, conspiracy, and 43 counts of negligent homicide." The officer straightened his papers. "Given the evidence, conviction is virtually certain. He is looking at life imprisonment at minimum." "And my brother's case?" "The investigation into Petty Officer Kofi Adeyemi's death has been reopened. We have already identified multiple failures in the chain of custody for training equipment. Commander Harwell's waiver authorizing continued use of defective gear has been added to the charges against him." He met her eyes. "Your brother will receive a posthumous commendation. His record will reflect that he died due to command negligence, not personal failure." Tamsin closed her eyes. For 2 years, she had carried the weight of her brother's death. The guilt of surviving when he did not. The rage at a system that had let him die and then covered up the truth. Now that weight was lifting. Not disappearing entirely. Never that. But becoming something she could carry without being crushed. "Thank you," she said quietly. The interviews continued for 3 more days. Each member of Team Bravo gave their account. Fontenot's testimony ran 6 hours, a detailed tactical breakdown of everything that had happened from the initial ambush to Harwell's capture. Tanaka walked the investigators through the technical aspects of his evidence collection, earning grudging admiration from cyber specialists who had never seen field work that sophisticated. Morrison testified about Derek Shaw, his cousin killed by weapons Harwell had sold. His voice broke twice during the account. Nobody rushed him. Master Chief Drummond provided the most damning testimony of all. He had worked with Harwell for 18 months, handling logistics for operations he had not fully understood. When he realized the true nature of those operations, he had been too deep to extract himself cleanly. "I am not asking for forgiveness," Drummond told the panel. "I knew something was wrong, and I looked the other way. That makes me complicit." He straightened in his chair. "But when Chief Adeyemi showed me the full scope of what Harwell had done, I knew I could not stay silent anymore. 43 Americans dead. That is not something you can rationalize away." Drummond would face his own charges. Dereliction of duty. Conduct unbecoming. He accepted them without complaint. Some debts could only be paid with accountability. On the 4th day, the delegation summoned Tamsin to a private meeting. She expected more questions. Instead, she found Rear Admiral Catherine Voss waiting for her. Voss was a legend in naval special warfare. The first woman to command a SEAL training detachment. A 30-year career built on excellence and an absolute refusal to accept limitations. "Chief Adeyemi," Voss said. "Please sit." Tamsin sat. "I have read every page of your file," Voss continued. "Training records, performance evaluations, mission reports." She leaned forward. "You are one of the most capable operators I have ever seen. Your actions over the past week confirm that assessment." "Thank you, Admiral." Voss waved off the gratitude. "I'm not here to compliment you. I'm here to offer you a choice." She slid a folder across the table. Naval Special Warfare is establishing a new unit. Integrated teams with no gender restrictions. Operators selected purely on capability. I want you to be part of it. Tamsin opened the folder. Inside was an assignment letter. Team leader position. Full operational authority. A chance to build something new. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you earned it," Voss replied simply. "Not because of what happened this week. Because of everything that came before. You have been proving yourself for years, Adeyemi. It is time the Navy acknowledged that." Tamsin stared at the letter. 3 days ago, she had been hunted across Afghanistan by her own people. Now she was being offered command of an elite unit. The world did not make sense sometimes. "What about my current team?" she asked. Team Bravo. Voss smiled slightly. Senior Chief Fontenot has already requested that any future assignments keep his team in your operational orbit. Apparently, you made an impression. They saved my life. From what I understand, it was mutual. Voss stood. Take some time. Think it over. But do not take too long. We need people like you, Chief. The Navy needs people like you. She left Tamsin alone with the folder and a decision that would shape the rest of her career. That evening, Tamsin found Fontenot on the roof of their temporary barracks. He was watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange and red. She settled beside him without speaking. Heard about the offer, he said eventually. Team leader. Fancy. Tamsin shrugged. Feels strange. A week ago, I was marked for death. Now they want me to lead. Fontenot turned to look at her. You know what I think? Tell me. I think you have been a leader since the moment you keyed that radio and saved my team. He smiled. The brass is just catching up. She looked at the mountains. Somewhere beyond them, Kofi was buried in a military cemetery in Texas. She had not visited his grave in 18 months. Too painful. Too raw. Now she wanted to go. To stand beside him and tell him what had happened. To promise him that his death had not been meaningless. I'm going to take it, she said. The position. Good. But I have a condition. Fontenot raised an eyebrow. I want you with me, Tamsin said. You, and Tanaka and Morrison and the others. We work well together. I am not interested in building a new team from scratch when I already have one that has been tested. Fontenot was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Where you go, we go, he said. That is how this works now. Tamsin shook his hand. For the first time in years, the future felt like something to anticipate rather than endure. Tomorrow there would be more debriefs, more paperwork, the slow, grinding machinery of military justice processing Commander Harwell toward his inevitable fate. But tonight, there was peace, and the promise of something better. The memorial service was held on a cloudless morning at Arlington National Cemetery. 43 names read aloud. 43 families gathered to honor those who would never come home. 43 flags folded with precision and presented with words that could never be enough. Tamsin stood in her dress whites among the rows of headstones. The uniform felt foreign after weeks in tactical gear, but today required formality. Today required respect. Fontenot stood beside her. Morrison and Tanaka flanked them. The rest of Team Bravo spread along the row, shoulders squared, faces solemn. They had not known most of the fallen personally, but they knew why these men and women had died, and they had helped ensure that death would not go unanswered. The chaplain read each name slowly. After each one, a bell tolled. The sound echoed across the cemetery, carrying grief and remembrance into the autumn air. When the 43rd name had been spoken, Tamsin stepped forward. Admiral Voss had asked her to say a few words. She had resisted at first. Public speaking was not her strength, but some things needed to be said by someone who understood. She faced the gathered families, mothers clutching photographs, fathers trying to stay strong, children too young to understand why their parent was never coming home. I did not know your loved ones, Tamsin began. Her voice was steady, but her heart ached. I never served beside them. I never shared a meal with them, or heard their stories, or learned what made them laugh. She paused, but I know what they stood for. I know they raised their right hand and swore an oath to defend this country. I know they put on a uniform every day and went into danger so that others could be safe. I know they were heroes. The wind stirred the flags surrounding the memorial, red and white and blue rippling against the sky. What happened to them was a betrayal, Tamsin continued. A betrayal by someone who should have protected them. Someone who traded their lives for money. That betrayal has been exposed. The man responsible will spend the rest of his life paying for what he did. She thought of Harwell in his cell at Leavenworth. The court-martial had been swift and merciless. Life imprisonment without possibility of parole. His name would be remembered only as a cautionary tale of corruption and treason. But justice does not bring them back, Tamsin said. Nothing can bring them back. All we can do is remember them, honor them, and make sure their sacrifice was not in vain. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. Kofi in his dress whites. The same image she had carried across Afghanistan. My brother was one of them, she said. Not one of the 43, but one of the countless others whose deaths could have been prevented if the people in charge had done their jobs. His name was Kofi Adeyemi. He wanted to be a SEAL more than anything in the world. He died 3 weeks before graduation because someone decided his life was worth less than a budget line. Her voice cracked. She steadied herself. I carry his picture with me everywhere I go. Not to remind me of what I lost, but to remind me of what I am fighting for. Every mission, every operation, every time I put my eye to a scope, I think of him. And I promise him that I will never stop fighting for the people who cannot fight for themselves. She looked at the families before her. Your loved ones deserve better. They deserved leaders who valued their lives. They deserved a system that protected them instead of betraying them. They deserved to come home. Tamsin placed her hand over her heart. I cannot give you that, but I can give you my word. As long as I wear this uniform, I will fight to make sure this never happens again. I will honor their memory with every breath I take. And I will never, ever forget. She stepped back. The chaplain concluded the service with a prayer. Taps played across the cemetery, the mournful notes hanging in the air long after the bugler finished. Afterward, families approached her one by one. Handshakes, embraces, whispered words of gratitude. A mother pressed a photograph into her hands. My son, she said, please remember him. I will, Tamsin promised. I will remember all of them. The team gathered at a quiet corner of the cemetery after the crowds dispersed. They stood in a loose circle, bound by something deeper than rank or orders. Hell of a speech, Morrison said. Tamsin shook her head. Just the truth. Fontenot checked his watch. Transport leaves in 2 hours. You ready for this? She looked at her team. Her team. The words still felt strange, but they were starting to feel right. 3 weeks had passed since Bagram. 3 weeks of debriefs and hearings and paperwork. Now, they had their first official mission as an integrated unit. A hostage rescue operation in a region she could not name. High risk, high stakes. Exactly the kind of work she had trained her entire life to do. I am ready, she said. They made their way to the waiting vehicles. As they walked, Tanaka fell in a step beside her. I have been thinking, he said, about call signs. Tamsin raised an eyebrow. Ghost works for you, Tanaka continued. But the team needs something. A designation. Something that means something. What did you have in mind? Tanaka smiled. Night Viper. It is what Fontenot's team was using when you saved them. Seems fitting. Tamsin considered it. Night Viper. The call sign that had started everything. The word she had spoken into a radio when she chose to reveal herself and save a team of strangers. I like it, she said. 12 hours later, Tamsin lay on a ridge overlooking a compound in a country that did not officially exist on any mission brief. Her rifle was steady. Her breathing was calm. Below her, Team Night Viper prepared to breach. The radio crackled in her ear. Overwatch, this is Viper 1. We are in position. Awaiting your call. She scanned the compound through her scope. Guards at the north entrance. Patrols along the east wall. Hostages confirmed in the central building. Everything was exactly where intelligence said it would be. For a moment, she thought of Kofi, of the 43, of everyone who had been lost, and everyone who remained. She carried them all with her now, not as a burden, but as a purpose. She pressed the transmit button. Her voice was calm, steady, and full of quiet confidence. Night Viper, I am on you. Stay low. Breach in 30 seconds. She took a breath, settled her crosshairs on the first target, and prepared to do what she had always done. Protect her people, no matter the cost. The night erupted in controlled violence. And somewhere above it all, a ghost watched over her family. If this story moved you, drop a comment about your favorite moment, or tell us about someone in your life who showed hidden strength when no one believed in them.